You've heard of Red America and Blue America, right? But what if that whole map is wrong? What if the real cultural lines that divide the US are way older and run much, much deeper? Well, let's dive in and look at a whole new way of seeing the country.
It's a huge question, isn't it? I mean, are we one unified nation, or are we really a collection of many different ones? On paper, sure, we're one country, but culturally, boy, those divisions can feel absolutely immense. Okay, so check out this map. This comes from a book called American Nations by Colin Woodard, and his big theory is that North America is really divided into 11 distinct rival cultures, all based on who first settled where, centuries ago. It's a really fascinating idea, but is it just history, or does a map like this still hold up today? Well, a team of researchers recently decided to put that to the test.
All right, so before we get into what those researchers found, we've got to understand the big idea behind Woodard's map in the first place.
It all boils down to this concept called the doctrine of first effective settlement. Sounds kind of fancy, I know, but the idea is actually simple. The cultural DNA of a region's first European settlers, it never really goes away. Think about the Puritans and what he calls Yankeedom, or the Scots-Irish in Greater Appalachia. Their values continue to shape the politics, the religion, and the social attitudes of that place for centuries to come.
So, that's the crucial question, right? Is this just a cool history lesson, or can we actually see these ancient invisible borders in modern data? That's exactly what a team of personality scientists set out to discover.
And what they found was a genuine paradox, something that really challenges how we think about regional differences in the first place.
To get started, they had to gather a ton of data. We're talking personality surveys for more than 75,000 people all across the US. Then, they mapped every single one of those people to one of Woodard's 11 nations.
And here's the first mind-blowing result. When they just looked at individuals, the personality differences between, say, someone from the Deep South and someone from the left coast were tiny, almost insignificant. It turns out that on a person-to-person level, we're all pretty darn similar.
This creates a huge question, right? If our individual personalities are basically the same, then why does New York City feel so fundamentally different from a small town in rural Alabama? Why do our cultural clashes feel so real?
In this slide right here, this is the key that unlocks the whole paradox. Look at that panel on the left. That's the person level. See how the differences are tiny, barely even there? But now, look at the right. That's the county level, where they average thousands of people together. And boom, the differences just explode.
This is what they call the power of aggregation. A tiny, almost unnoticeable personality tilt, when you multiply it across thousands of people living together, creates this powerful and distinct regional character. The personality of the community becomes so much stronger than the personality of any single person inside it.
So what do these aggregated regional personalities actually look like on the ground? Come on, let's take a quick tour and see how this all plays out.
First stop, the Deep South. According to all this data, this region has one of the most distinct, clear-cut personalities in the entire country. In this statement, "I have a strong personality," was one of the top things people in the Deep South agreed with. That, along with another high-ranking statement, "I am an extraordinary person," well, it starts to paint a picture of a culture that values confidence and a powerful sense of self. Now, for a totally sharp contrast, let's jump all the way across the country to the left coast. That covers coastal California, Oregon, and Washington. And this statement just illustrates the difference perfectly. "I believe in the importance of art," was the single most characteristic response for the left coast. You can see the data pointing to a culture that's defined by creativity, curiosity, and unconventionality, a complete flip from the Deep South.
Here's one more fascinating contrast, and this one is about everyday honesty. The study asked people if they would return extra change when a cashier makes a mistake. Residents of Greater Appalachia, a region that really values personal honor, showed the highest agreement. And who showed the lowest? New Netherland, the area around New York City, a culture historically defined by commerce and trade. It's a really stark difference in everyday morality, and it seems like it's been baked in by centuries of culture.
So, okay, we see these personality differences are real, even if they only show up at the community level. But what's the main fault line here? Is there one single factor that truly divides these nations? The researchers actually boiled it all down to one main factor they called authoritarian conventionalism. It's a mouthful, I know. But you can just think of it as a spectrum. On one end is a deep respect for authority, for tradition, and for order. And on the other end is a preference for creativity, for openness, and for individualism. And here's the kicker. When the researchers mapped this single personality trait across the country, it lined up almost perfectly with our modern red versus blue political map. The centuries-old borders of these American nations are, in a very real sense, the invisible fault lines of today's culture wars. It's wild to think about.
Which brings this whole thing back to you. We might not notice these tiny differences in our day-to-day lives, but that power of aggregation means these ancient cultural currents are still shaping our communities, our politics, and our world in these huge, profound ways. So take another look at the map. What nation do you live in, and how do you think it has shaped you?